What's up, wizards? I'm Dev, that's Chicken, and that's Ziggy, and we'll call this the Aftermath. Well, that's a lot of chords. That's because at this point, I think we've reached a critical mass of people in the comments section asking to see the cube, which I thought was a cool idea and very nice of you folk. Thank you very much. But the only problem was I had like 4 different disparate cubes that I'm working on. Almost none of them are actually complete. I got the foil cube and the cat cube. There's the old school cube. I'm working on that one and stuff. But I didn't have one large complete cube to show off. And so I have spent the last week going through all of this stuff. Right? All of that stuff right there. Trying to figure out what exactly a good cube with all of this mess would end up looking like. I've been making cuts and working hard all week, and I think that I'm finally ready to show off the 2023 SBMTG cube. This time our cube is 360 cards and breaks down like this text on screen, but why so big? That's a very good question. I'm prepared to answer it. Now, 360 cards can be drafted by 8 players and draft the entire cube, which is nice, but importantly, it can be drafted by fewer players and not draft the whole cube, which I'm actually much more into. You see, cubes can get a little bit expensive there, bud, so I like when a cube can be drafted by the same 2 or 4 players like 8, 10, 12 times, and nothing ever feels samey. I mean, you're paying a good little bit for a cube, so longevity is important. I don't want it to get boring within the span of a night. But enough with the introductions, right? If you remember the last time I showed you a cube, it was about half this many cards, and it took like 45 minutes. So we don't have any time to waste, and I don't think you want to waste any more time either. Let's go ahead and show you this thing. All right, so no further ado, let's go ahead and crack into it in color pie order, which means we start with white. Don't ask me why. It's a Wizards of the Coast thing, but that means that, again, we start with Savannah Lions. Just like we did last time, I showed off a cube to you, but it's going to be tough to get me to cut Savannah Lions from a cube. It's just such a perfect little mono-white aggro card, or just any deck looking to play creatures. It's a perfectly acceptable 1-drop, and it reminds me of a much better time. So Savannah Lions starts our cube, but we've also got a Samaru in the white 1-drop creatures here. This is just a 1-mana 2/2 legendary that doesn't do much of anything else, but is also good for your mono-white aggro decks. Acacian Javelineers is one of the few cards from Fallen Empires, but it is represented in a few cards in this cube. And Acacian Javelineers is another one of those that it's kind of going to be tough to get me to cut. There's going to be better 1-drops in white, but none that bring the flavor and nostalgia that I love from Javelineers. Lunarch Veteran is in here. This could be Soul Warden, but I actually think this is like cooler than Soul Warden, and when it dies you can disturb it, it comes back, and it's good for the Aristocrats decks and stuff. So I like Lunarch Veteran, and even though there's not a whole lot of life game payoffs in the cube, I do want to flex in each color everything that that color can do on the color wheel, or on the color pie rather. So I think having some life gain is a good thing for white, and Lunarch Veteran is just a cool card. There's also Clever Lumomancer. This one's sent to us by Cascane, a patron and Twitch mod, by the way. He really likes Clever Lumomancer. He sent me a copy of it, and I actually like what this does in any cube for that matter. It's just a good white 1-drop that makes, blue-white spells good. It makes red-white spells a real deck. Usually the spells deck in any given cube is going to be blue and red, but I like that Clever Lumomancer allows you to kind of branch out a little bit, and you don't even have to have blue in your spells deck, so it's just a cool card to have. Thanks, Cascane. Aside from that, Enlightened Tutor, which I believe Cascane also sent, he caught me saying that I still wanted a Mirage Enlightened Tutor during the proxy video where we got a fake Mirage Enlightened Tutor. So thanks, Kane. We needed an Enlightened Tutor for the cube, and you gave us one. So I appreciate that. Enlightened Tutor is a super important card in this cube for other reasons we'll discuss later. There's also Swords to Plowshares, which I don't think many white cubes would be complete without, to be honest with you, but there's also Path to Exile, a similar spell to Swords to Plowshares. What I'm really hoping to do by having some redundancies here is to split these up between drafts so that you'll see a version of this effect in a lot of drafts, but not every single draft, and sometimes you'll see both, and that'll be nice, right? There's also Spirit Link in here. This gives a creature lifelink, but you can put it on your opponent's creatures too, and basically take them out of combat. So do remember that. This is almost the original pacifism in some ways, and it's just a really cool card too. White Knight is in the deck. There's going to be some old school stuff that still made it into this cube, and White Knight is a good example. There's not a whole lot of protection in the cube, but this is one of the few examples of it. So it can be a good creature, especially considering black is the color of removal. But it's also good in a deck that we'll talk about a little bit later. But we've also got got Knight of the White Orchid to continue, or Orchid, to continue the Knight train here. There's only a couple of Knights in white, but this is arguably the better one, so we'll put a copy of it in. Longbow Archer. This is the worst of these 3 white 2-drops that we've looked at so far that all cost 2 white mana, but still a solid dude. It's got reach and first strike, which is really important the early turns of a draft. There's Seeker of the Way along with Clever Lumimancer. This makes, again, those not just Is It Spells decks, possibility. If you get Lumimancer and Seeker of the Way, you're definitely going like white, blue, or red, white spells. So, but aside from that deck, it's just a nice card to have access to. There's also Wall of Omens. This is a Wall of Blossoms, but it's white. Cube also has Wall of Blossoms in it. I just like these 2-mana 0/4s that draw cards. So we've got Ronom Unicorn. There are a ton of enchantments in this cube. You'll note as we go through, and we'll talk about why in just a moment when we get to the white 3-drops. But Ronom Unicorn, a lot better than it looks, and I do like for a cube to have these sort of sideboardable cards, right? Aside from that, we'll get into the spells with Gather the Townsfolk. Feels like a creature because it makes 2 of them, right? We've also got Destroy Evil in here, along with Reprisal. So an old card and a very new card that feel in some ways somewhat similar, but I think they're both important. Pacifism is some, enchantment-based removal, and we've got the good one, the one from Mirage, with Grack on it. We've got Suspension Field, nice little promo version of it here. Again, more enchantment-based removal. There's a Disenchant. Again, if there's going to be so many enchantments and artifacts, for that matter, that are important in this cube, I think it's important to carry a copy of Disenchant. And Devlore, my favorite copy of it, is from Mirage, so we picked up one of those. We've got Gift of Estates, the fancy Strixhaven Archive looking one. This is something that white doesn't do very much on the color pie, but it's represented in a couple of ways in this cube, right? Knight of the White Orchid and now Gift of Estates can go get planes if your opponent has like more lands than you, which is something white used to be able to do a lot more often. We've got Dawn of Hope. This is our one card in the whole cube that says whenever you gain life on it. So it's important for the life gain decks, but you can't really make a whole life gain deck in this cube unless you get Dawn of Hope, Enlightened Tutor, and like 3 or 4 things that gain life. It's very tough to do. Dawn of Hope is more of a control-based card in this cube, at least in application so far. But it is nice to have something that says whenever you gain life on it. And I like these white enchantments that are, again, like global enchantments that allow you to like have a creature factory. Again, all of this is going to be important in just a moment when we get to the 3-drop white creatures, which we're at right now. We have a normal sort of aggro-y white creature with Siege Veteran. I like this a lot more than Luminarch Aspirant. I really do. There's not all of the soldier synergy in the world, but there are some other soldiers in the cube that can proc off of this. But for the most part, you're just getting a +1/+1 counter every turn. And I like that about Veteran. Plus, we've got a fancy foil borderless one, so that should be in the cube, right? Aside from that, Mesa Enchantress from Secret Lair Drop is our next card. I really, really like the way this thing looks, man. It's just a really cool looking card. And it's, you guys know that I love Verduran Enchantress, and this is basically the white version of that card. Which I think is really, really cool, and it's one of the reasons that we have so many enchantments like Dawn of Hope and Pacifism, Suspension Field, and stuff like that. I want there to be an Enchantress sub-theme running throughout this cube, and this is one of the ways you can really pay that off if you're able to pick this card up. Inspiring Overseer is just a solid white 3-drop, 2/1 flyer, gain a life, draw card. Guardian of Faith is something you might not expect to see. We got a foil borderless one here too, but that's not the number one thing that affected my decision. There are multiple sweepers in this cube, 3-4 to be exact, and it's just nice to have something like Guardian of Faith that can help establish board state. First of all, it puts a thing on board. There's not a whole lot of great white 3-drops in this cube, at least, that are great on stats and all that. So this is at least sort of that. It's got the flash, it's got the keyword ability, Vigilance, and it's just nice that it can sort of counterspell effectively a Wrath of God or Damnation or something. Paladin Invect makes it into this cube too. By the skin of its teeth, I want to cut this card, honestly, but it's not too powerful. Protection from black and from red seems really, really good, and it is, but it still doesn't make the card anything too special. It just feels kind of cheaty once it's out against that black-red deck. It's a really important card to have, But into the spells, there's also Exile, just exile removal for an attacking non-white creature for 3 mana at instant speed. Banishing Light, so kind of like an Oblivion Ring effect, more enchantment-based removal. This one, Imperial Armor, we'll also see that enchantments and auras especially are important, not just because of the enchantment sub-theme, the Enchantress sub-theme, but also because of another card we'll see in just a moment. But Imperial Armor is a card that I've loved for a very long time. A lot of us remember beating face with this card when we were like 11. Aside from that, Sacred Sacred Mesa, another white creature factory enchantment. These are important to have both in control decks and just anything that wants to play a bunch of enchantments and such. There's Glorious Anthem, which is just +1/+1 to all your dudes, good in Enchantress decks, but also aggro decks. Orim's Prayer, a little known enchantment from Tempest block. Tempest actually itself. That's 3 mana for an enchantment. If any creature attacks you, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. So that is going to trigger your Dawn of Hope. That's pretty cool. And it's just a nice little life gain enchantment for, again, control-based Enchantress list, or just straight up control list for that matter. There's also Restoration Angel. There are a number of pretty abusable ETB triggers in this cube. So Restoration Angel is just always a good pickup on stats alone, to be honest with you. The flash and all that. But the fact that it can blink some pretty heinous ETBs is noteworthy. There's Leonin War Leader, a nice little foil one here. I don't know if you can tell, but it's nice and shiny. And this is kind of a silly one, but it came out of the cat cube, right? 4 mana 4/4 cat soldier. Remember that soldier creature type. When it attacks, you get 2 1/1 lifelinks that are tapped and attacking. That's really, really good for board state in a box. It can take over a game. It's just a nice little dude to have in limited a lot of the time. Blinking Spirit is an old guy, but he's really, really difficult to get rid of. At any point, you can just return him to your hand. That's kind of cute. Aside from that, Witch Hunter, one of the weirdest cards in the whole cube, but I will also be loath to take this card out of any cube that I make, so long as it's on theme, right? The fact that it can tap for 3 mana and return a creature to an opponent's hand, that's actually extremely sick. You can't use it to abuse your own ETBs, but the fact that it's effectively a white trade win rider or something, like, yeah, that's good. It's a good Magic card. Wrath of God is in here. It doesn't have to be, but it kind of has to be. So Wrath of God is in the cube. There's Resurrection. There's a couple of white ways to reanimate creatures, because that was a thing that white used to be able to do, and can honestly is getting back to its roots. We've got like Invoke Justice, Repair and Recharge, and Standard right now. So WotC at some point in the last few years remembered that white can reanimate things. That's nice. So it's nice to have the oldest version of this effect in your cube. Divine Transformation doesn't look like much, just 4 mana for an aura that gives a creature +3/+3, but really sweet in the Enchantress decks and amazing with a card that we've got coming up. Sarah Angel is our first 5-drop creature. Just a normal thing. I just want to represent old school Magic in my cubes whenever possible. So it's nice to have a Sarah in here, and she's not a bad creature. 4 mana flyer, or really 4/4 flyers win games of limited almost no matter what the power level of the cube is. So it's nice to have Sarah in here looking pretty. There's also Karmic Guide, another protection from black creature, but another way too to reanimate things in white. So nice to have. We've got Soliflara, my favorite card in white in this cube, my favorite white card. This is great for the Enchantress strategies. It's something you can pick up besides just Mesa Enchantress or Verduran Enchantress or Enchantress's Presence for the Enchantress decks. And it's just really sweet. If you throw a Divine Transformation on this, suddenly all your guys get +3/+3. Imperial Armor, all your guys get +X/+X. So Soliflara is actually really, really sweet, and there are a few equipments this works with. Sadly, no stickers, right? I don't care for stickers, but Soliflara is one of those rare, like, uncards, sort of, that I just think was, like, more than worth having in the cube. I love this card. It's one of my favorite cards in the whole cube. But aside from that, there's also Danitha, Benalia's Hope. Got a nice little foil version of Danny here, and I think this is cool too. Again, with things like Divine Transformation and other auras that we can just like throw down on it. But again, there are extremely important equipments in this cube here and there. There's only a couple of them, but there are that you can throw onto this and just have yourself a great time. So on stats alone and the fact that it has 3 amazing keywords, Danitha can also just be a presence in that way. But if you can get an aura or an equipment on her, she's just like beans. She's so good. But aside from that, there's Vet Bodyguard again, representing the old school, but one of the worst 5-drops in the cube, to be honest. But I just really like Veteran Bodyguard. I like the way he looks. He's cool. But it's also Sun Titan, a lot of cool 3-drops. This can get back just in the cube at large, but Sun Titan's always going to be a nice one to have. Jareth, Leonin Titan, is one you may not be as familiar with. This also came out of the cat cube. This is 6 mana for a 4/7, and it gets +7/+7 when it blocks. It just casts Righteousness on itself when it blocks, but the cool thing is that you can just pay a white and have it gain protection from a color till end of turn. So once it's out and you have some mana to back it up, it just never dies. Great control finisher, or just big mid-range guy, but you have to be very committed to white. Austere Command, a lot of people have been putting in Farewell in their cubes in place of this. I'll never do that, and to be honest, I don't love Austere Command being here, but I think it's an important card to be able to clean up all the fancy artifacts and enchantments and such that we've got in this cube. Eternal Dragon is gross and is very good in, again, these control decks as kind of a finisher that you can early plane cycle. There's Approach of the Second Sun sent to us by Plumokin. What up, Plumokin, in the comments section? Plumokin, just good all around solid dude. And he sent us this approach so that we'd have a funky little like alternative win condition for control decks in the cube. You don't see this all the time, but when you do, it's pretty hype. There's also Micaeus the Lunarch. This finishes off white. It's the only X card in white, and it's nice for creature-based decks or even just, honestly, decks that don't have a lot of creatures that are kind of mid-range based. So just a nice little dude to fill out just about any curve. Let's go ahead and get into blue here, starting with Rishadan Dockhand. Maybe some of you haven't heard of this card, but this one is foil, retro frame, looking all good and stuff. I don't have Rishadan Port in the cube because that card is really cheese. It is government cheese, but this card is cool. You actually have to use a real resource to tap a land down, which is nice, but it's still very annoying to have this card around. Brainstorm is in the cube, along with some other 1-mana stuff in blue that draws cards. It's a strength of blue, so why not play to it? Not only is Brainstorm in here, but also Retro Frame Preordained looking nice. We got Thought Scour all foil. Look at that pretty art looking good. So blue has a few ways for 1 mana to draw a card and do other cool stuff. Spell Pierce is also in here for just 1 mana. There's Unsummon in the 1 mana slot. A nice little unlimited edition Unsummon right there. We got Witness Protection, a card that I just love. I will continue to soapbox for this card whenever I can. It should be in your cube if it's not. It's so awesome. Unstable Mutation, also great with Soliflora, by the way, if all your dudes get mine or +3/+3, but you need to finish the opponent quickly. Just great for Enchantress decks and such, and there's a few enchantments in here that make a sort of white-blue or green-white or green-blue or Bant Enchantress deck work, and Unstable Mutation is a good little card for those. Phantasmal Image is one of my favorite blue creatures in any cube, and it should be in just about any cube. I love a clone. That's just 2 mana. Who doesn't? Merfolk Looter, one of the very few merfolk in the cube, but still. Draw a card, discard a card is good for just about any deck out there. There's Malevolent Hermit, the only, if I'm not mistaken, the only other double-sided card in the whole cube. I really don't like flipping cards and sleeves and stuff. It's not a thing I like to do, so I like to avoid it. But Malevolent Hermit was just cool enough that, we needed a 2-drop creature in blue, so sure, Hermit gets the slot. There's Snapcaster Mage, one of the more important cards in blue in the whole cube. This is a proxy. I will point out proxies when we see them, but this is from the proxy set that we showed off from Wish a few months ago. But I did not actually spend all the money on this Snapcaster, but it is obviously an incredibly important card in multiple draft archetypes. There's Wall of Tears. A lot of people probably not too acquainted with this card, but it is extremely annoying. If it blocks anything, you return the creature it blocks to its owner's hand. You bounce the creature it blocks at end of combat, and that's disgusting. Turns out that is harder to get around than you think, and it's very frustrating. There's also Memory Lapse in here. We're going to see a few counter spells at the 2-drop slot as we move through, and one of them is Memory Lapse. The next one is Counter Spell, which again is in most cubes, nothing to see here, along with Negate, Strixhaven, Archive, Foil, Negate. Look how the counter spell he's casting is all shiny. That's so nice. Enough with the counter spells, right? We've also got Legends Boomerang in here to keep bouncing stuff. Vision's Impulse to make sure we get the right cards. Security Bypass, pretty new little thing, and it looks weird in the cube, but I actually really like the way this plays in cube, and I also like the way it plays with Soliflora. You can't just like copy it on everything, basically, and then like get through with everything. The creature has to attack unblocked, but the way it plays with Soliflora is that your biggest guy, something else can wear, the Soliflora can wear the Security Bypass, and your other guy can get through for combat damage for free, and I like that. But we've also got Mystic Veil. This is effectively a counterspell for important creatures, but it's also an enchantment, so it pays off Enchantress decks and stuff. There's Mana War in here. You guys know I love Mana War, and I love bouncing stuff, so there's also a copy of Baron Talarian Archmage. If we happen to bounce any of our own stuff, we'll draw cards. He's all shiny. He looks nice. There's Min, Wily Illusionist, one of my favorite cards in the cube, period, and easily my favorite blue card in the entire cube. I want to make a commander deck with Min just a little bit, but Min does work, like a lot of work, There's a lot of ways to draw cards, obviously, in blue and even other colors in this cube. So this can be making illusions, son. So just if you haven't tried Min in your cube yet, this is an awesome card. There's Vendilion Click, again, a proxy here, but one I think is reasonably important to have in most cubes. There's Time Elemental, a weird one, but again, I just like Trade Wind Rider. But that sounds weird considering I don't have Trade Wind Rider in my cube, but I do have Time Elemental. We've got Psy Master Thopterus for a little bit of artifact payoff. We need that from time to time. We've got Daring Apprentice, another counterspell on a stick. We've seen a lot of counterspells so far in blue that aren't on sticks, but I prefer even for my counterspells in blue to be on sticks. Aside from that, Serendipity, I have not been confused here. The card is in fact blue. Just the frame is green. It's a famous misprint. There's a million of these running around. It's nothing special, but it is a 3-mana 3/4 flyer, and that is kind of special on rate. So we've also got Thornwind Fairies, the last 3-drop blue creature. This is a Tim, but in some ways better, in some ways worse. Just a Tim that flies and can zap. Tap to zap, we used to say, for just 1 damage to a target. And that can be important some of the time. There's also Dissipate in the 3-drop slot, a counterspell that exiles. We've got it in standard right now. There's Capsize right there. A lot of people have flashbacks, just really bad memories of Capsize, but it's in here. If you're going to bounce stuff, we're going to do it right. We've got Gaseous Form. A lot of people have probably never seen this card. Again, representing Legends. Not a whole lot of cards doing that in this cube, but representing Legends, Gaseous Form is basically an aura that you put on a creature, and that creature doesn't deal damage in combat. Pretty good for blue. There's also Propaganda. A lot of you know what this does. This is whenever a thing would attack you, they got to pay 2 mana for it. Again, just excellent in control decks and enchantress decks. There's Towering Sky Summoner, one of the most important creatures in blue. This is just great to build around when you actually do get it. There's Whirler Rogue. This is, again, sweet with stuff like Psy and any other like artifact synergies you may have, and it's just a solid card. There's Clone. I love clones in cube, so I'll play the OG one, but we're not quite done with the clones in cube, to be honest. Curator of Mysteries looks weird, but it's good with Min or anything else, spoiler alert, that wants you to draw multiple cards a turn that's in this cube. I like that. And just for the 1 mana to cycle, it's nice too. But aside from that, it's a 4 mana, 4/4 flyer. Like, why not? There's plenty of ways to discard cards in this cube too. So the Scry 1 comes up from time to time. There's Mystical Teachings, a nice little tutor, for instance. And that's awesome. You can also get cards with Flash, which there are some. You can go get your Guardian of Faith or whatever, your Snapcaster. So that's kind of nice. But Mystical Teachings also can be flashed back for a black mana, which I think is nice. There's most of the colors in this cube have at least 1 card that is kind of gold. And Mystical Teachings is one of those, but you can play it in a blue-red deck. It is still totally acceptable to play this tutor. Aside from that, Factor Fiction, we have now entered the 4 mana draw a few cards phase of blue here, and there's a few cards in the cube that do that, like Factor Fiction. We've got Gifts Ungiven, which is kind of like a Factor Fiction, just a little bit if you turn your head sideways at it. There's Memory Deluge. Gifts Ungiven just looks cool, by the way, but Memory Deluge is also a card we have access to, a shiny one, by the way, which is nice. But now we're done with 4 mana draw, X number of cards. Biden of Thas is in here. This is a legendary enchantment artifact, so procs both of those deck types, and just has some bang up text. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Let's go. That's really good. Opera Spy Network. Actually kind of similar. Whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's similar, but this pays off artifact strategies and give you a steady stream of 1/1 flyers every turn. Control Magic is in the cube. Sorry, I apologize for being annoying, but that is a thing blue does. They don't have 1 card that does it. And I just love Control Magic. It looks so cool. I love the color palette on Control Magic. Same thing with Air Elemental. I just want to, embrace old school Magic whenever I can. Even though Air Elemental isn't amazing, it is still a 4/4 flyer, and those win games of limited, and I just love the way it looks. I love the color palette on it. I love the yellow in the background. I love the sort of midnight blue they use for her tail here, and like all the swirlies and stuff. It's just really cool art. I like Air Elemental. Leave me alone. Aside from that is Vesuvian Doppelganger. I think this is the last clone in the cube. This is effectively a clone that can change every turn, and you get some really cool Quentin Hoover art while you're at it. So yes, Mole Drifter is in here. I have brought up ETB effects a couple of times so far here, and Mole Drifter is obviously one of the better ETB effects that's going to be in this entire cube. So you'll play this card in your min decks too, right? There's just a lot of reasons to want to play a Mole Drifter. Moloku the Clouded Mirror, my favorite creature from any Kamigawa block, perhaps. That could be contended by a black creature we'll look at later. But Moloku, I have a lot of great memories with, and I love this dude. So we'll play Moloku whenever we get it. Just one of the better finishers in blue, whether you're mid-range or control. There's also Mohammadi Jin. I've never had a friend like him, you know. He's a good little dude. I mean, this is just a 6-mana 5/6 vanilla. He's not vanilla. He flies. At least he flies. But again, I just wouldn't feel the same without having Mahamodi, however you're supposed to pronounce it. I used to say Mahamodi. I'm pretty sure it's actually Mahamadi. But yeah, it's this guy. It's this guy. 6-mana 5/6. Temporal Anchor for the having of fun. I think you should have fun when you play Magic. So, Temporal Anchor's in the cube. Snap it up if you're heavily dedicated to blue. Tolarian Terror is in here. I shouldn't have to explain it too much. Again, enables the spells decks in blue. And then Power Sync. One more counterspell before we get out of here. And yes, I know what you're thinking. You know me. Yeah, there are counterspells in my cube. It's a thing blue does, and it's a thing blue ought to be able to do. Just, you shouldn't have 30 counterspells in your deck or whatever it is. And so, since there are some counterspells, but a relative few of them, and again, a massive number of cards in the cube to begin with, it's going to be tough for a blue player to get more than 2 or 3 counterspells in their deck, and I'm fine with that number of counterspells. Let's see what we start black with. It is Will-O-the-Wisp. This is actually one of my favorite creatures of all time. I love how it looks. I love the legend behind it. I first heard of the Will-O-the-Wisp when I was like 8 years old from a book from my school library about like ghosts and spooky stuff. So I just love the sort of lore of this card. I'm not going to talk about it too long, but it's extremely annoying. Flying, regenerate for just 1 black mana. Does not let stuff without trample through. Just blocks everything. Great little dude for control decks and just getting into the late game. There's Vampire Bats. I just love a 1-drop flyer you can pump. Leave me alone. This is, again, this is one of the few Legends cards in the cube. And I actually think Vampire Bats is like legitimately kind of good. I really do. But there's also Ashnod Flesh Mechanist. Look at some new stuff now, I like 1-mana 1/1 Death Touchers. And this is the ultimate 1-mana 1/1 Death Toucher. And it, facilitate some stuff that we're trying to do in this cube. There's not too much zombie stuff, but there is one card that pays off zombies. This does that. There's a sort of aristocrats deck that we can build out of this cube, and this helps with that by sacking stuff. So Ashnod just good on a bunch of different axes for a bunch of different decks you can draft in this cube. There's also Dark Ritual. It just looks awesome, doesn't it? That's all. That's the only reason I like the card. It's super fast mana for black. You get this if you're in black, or even if you're not. Maybe it'll put you in it because Dark Ritual's that good. Cut Down. A lot of people put Fatal Push in this slot. I think Cut Down is just more fair. I just think it's a better Magic card in terms of balance. So I like Cut Down. There's also Bone Shards in here. We're trying to make that Aristocrats or Sacrifice deck work pretty good. And even if you don't have a guy to sacrifice, you can discard a card and take out their thing. Not ideal, but at least there's another way you can cast it. There's also Village Rites. While we're trying to facilitate those sacrifice decks, why not have that, especially if it's nice and shiny, which it is. So we'll play that. We got a Black Knight in here. If we got White Knight, we should play Black Knight. Now we can make Monty Python jokes. There's also Nantuko Shade. This could be Misery Shadow, but I just think, again, this is the more balanced, sort of fair, not overpowered card, and it reminds me of good days. So Nantuko Shade's in here. Zulaport Cutthroat, not Blood Artist. This could just as easily be Blood Artist, but instead it's Zulaport Cutthroat. Not a enormous difference, but there is one. But if we're going to, ensure that we have a Aristocrats deck that's possible to make, we need some Blood Artist effects, and this is one of, I believe, 4 in this cube. But we've also got Piper the Swarm, sweet little 2-drop that can take over a game. I know, it's just rats, and it takes mana to tap it, and it's got to tap it. It looks terrible, but this card can easily take over a game when given the space. Great and limited, period. Terror in here, not Doomblade. Again, I like old school stuff, and if you give me the chance to have a newish looking Doomblade with a black border, or a 3rd edition Terror with a white border, I'll take the Terror every single day. That's the kind of player I am. Chainer's Edict is next. Yes, this one is signed by Ben Thompson. It actually belongs to my friend Sonny. I've been in possession of this card for over a decade at this point, and it's popped up on the channel a couple of times at this point. And every time it pops up on the channel, I say, Sonny, come get your cards. I've got this. I've got your signed Grinning Demon, I think, from the same guy. I've got a couple of things of yours. Contact me. Come chill. Play some Magic. Come get your cards, Sonny. But while I have the card, it's in the cube. Aside from that, we've got Walk the Plank in here. Fancy full art foil version too. There are 1 or 2 merfolk this can't kill, but for the most part, this kills just about everything with the caveat that it's sorcery speed. There's Hymn to Turak, one of the more unfair black cards in the entire cube, but Like I said, Fallen Empires is represented on a couple of cards in here, and this should be one of them because it's the best card from Fallen Empires. But not the last time we'll see that set symbol here. Not even in this color. Demonic Tutor, this is also a proxy. This is not a beta Demonic Tutor I spent $1 million on. This is from the Proxy Wish set, and it's one of the more powerful cards in all of black pretty easily. This will put you in black pretty quick, or at least splashing black if nothing else. There's Animate Dead. I want both white and black to reanimate things in this cube, but I want black to do it for cheaper, and Animate Dead does a good job of that while looking awesome. I love the color palette and like overall style on this card. Great art. But aside from that, there's some more blast from the past, old school stuff that's going to give people nightmares. Royal Assassin is in here. Tap to destroy a tapped creature. What were they thinking? It's actually just okay. But back then, this thing was just feared, you know. But there's also Hypnotic Spectre. This is still like a decent card. You know, so is Royal Assassin for that matter, especially in limited, but these are just great old school cards that strike fear and nostalgia in the hearts of a lot of players. Sorceress Queen is in here too, another old school card. This can tap to make a creature a 0/2 and is my favorite piece of Kaya Folio art, so I love it. But it's also Plague Crafter for a newer thing. Again, no Planeswalkers in here, but sometimes this will make them discard a card, always makes them sack a guy. There's also Tatsunari. This is maybe my actual favorite like legendary creature in the history of Kamigawa. You know, Tatsunari is one of those rare black cards that actually facilitates these sort of Enchantress strategies in black. We don't have a whole lot of those, but this does that and is also kind of a gold card too, so keep that in mind. But it's Phyrexian Rager, totally normal card, just 3 mana, draw a card when it comes into play, lose a life. It's important as like glue in certain decks. There's Murderous Rider, sweet little dude here, and one of the few zombies in the cube. That's going to matter here coming up. There's Braids, again, you know, making sure that we can make Aristocrats decks from time to time, and just a solid card. There's Dark Banishing, not the best removal spell in the world, but I actually kind of like for there to be not so much like barely conditional, 2 mana instant speed black removal in my cube. I know it's a thing black does, but I actually like for instant speed removal to be 3 mana. So not only do we have Dark Banishing, we've got Hero's Downfall in here as well. Now that leads us to Stupor. This is kind of a not as good Hymn to Torak, but if you're making a discard deck, you're going to need both of these most of the time. Stupor, and it's a nice little promo, 6th edition, like foil one. It's a nice looking Stupor. But this is also, 3 mana, or basically 1 card for 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, the same way Hymn is. It's an important card. We've got Victimize in here. This is the other cheap reanimation spell that again enables sacrifice decks while also obviously enabling reanimation too. Victimize is a very sweet card. We've got Bastion of Remembrance, another Blood Artist effect. That's number 2 right there. This was my favorite preview card of all time. My preview from Ikoria, not only my favorite, but I think the best. So preview card that I've ever had. So for my birthday this year, I splurged and spent like $5 and found a foil Bastion of Remembrance for the cube, and it's been in here ever since, or it's been in, a version of the cube ever since. Ravenous Chupacabra, sent by patron Die for Metal. I've been a patron for a very long time and part of the Discord. Everyone that sent me a card is actually part of the unofficial Discord. They sent me a few cards a few weeks ago, and they've all been incorporated into this cube, or a lot of them have. And Ravenous Chupacabra is a card that needed to be in the cube beforehand, and I didn't actually have a copy anymore. So thanks, DFM. I really appreciate you sending me the Chup, because, everyone needs a Chupa Chupa in their Cuba Cuba. But we've also got a Necrotile, which does a pretty good impression, even though it came first, of Ravenous Chupacabra. This casts Terror when it ETBs, and we call it Jafar. That's a fun thing to call the card. It looks like Jafar, so we named it that. Miri the Cursed is also in here, a card that not enough people are familiar with. Flying First Strike Haste, 3 power for 4 mana, and there's more text on it. It's a really, really good card, and the haste matters a lot of the time. Rankle is also in here, again, 4 mana, 3 power, flying haste in black. I like redundant effects, but Rankle is often the better card because of all the things it does when it hits. We got Gonti in here. If you haven't read this card in a while, it's a lot of text. When it ETBs, you basically get the best card from the top 4 of your opponent's library, and you can cast it for whatever mana you want to at any point while Gonti's in play. This is a great card in Standard when it was around, and it's a great card in Cube because you can bet you're going to get something wacky off the top of their library. Uncle Isfan's also in here. I just love Uncle Isfan. The dark has to be represented on a card or two, because it's like my favorite set of all time. And Uncle Isfan is he's just a great dude. to have. Just a wonderful blocker. He looks like he's a great attacker if you look at the art, but just the best blocker in the game, baby. Graveborn Muse is in here. This is our zombie payoff. It's basically a Phyrexian arena, sort of, for zombies. You know, for each zombie we control, we draw a card and lose a life during our upkeep. So there's not a ton of zombies in here, but you can get more than one on the table. That said, if Graveborn Muse is your only zombie on the table, it's still good. It's still a Phyrexian arena on a 3/3. That's good. Damnation is in here. This is Wrath of God. It's just yet another sweeper effect. We'll see one or two more before it's all said and done. Pestilence, I guess, is a sweeper effect, but this goes well with both White Knight and Karmic Guide. I love Pestilence. It's good on its own, right? Just a sick card, but you can make the black-white Pestilence deck with pro-black creatures, and I love that that's an option in this cube. Breeding Pool, yet another Fallen Empires card. Too many Fallen Empires cards, but this is great for sacrifice fodder and stuff. People who have played with this card love it, and there's a reason for that. Sindra Vampire's in here. While we're representing old school creatures and such, why not throw Sindra in? He looks really freaky. I agree with you, but he's just a sick little dude. Phyrexian Plague Lord's in here. This is sweet too for Aristocrats decks because it is a free sacrifice outlet, but it's also a 5-mana 4/4 that can tap to destroy nearly anything and get through indestructible, even though, to the best of my knowledge, there's no indestructible in this cube. Just a good little dude here. He's solid. Fallen Angel, another Aristocrats thing, free sacrifice outlet. As many times as you want per turn, but a lot of people have lost to this card over the years. Fallen Angel can just get in for 5 or 7 and end your game really, really fast. So, important thing here. Shriek Maw is in here. Cast Terror when you evoke it into play. The only other evoke thing in the entire cube besides Moldrifter, but an important one to have. Purage of Urborg. This one came in from the Cat Cube too, and I think it's one of the last ones to come in from the Cat Cube, but this I just kind of miss whenever I don't have it in a cube. I really like this. It's underrated. First strike when attacking, and considering it gets a +1/+1 counter for a black mana, whenever you cast a black spell, it can get up to a 4/5, 5/6, like faster than you think. So this card is actually pretty sick. I like Purage a lot. Thrashing Wumpus, a Pestilence on legs. Again, a lot of people have an affinity for this card. There's a reason for that. It's a really sick dude. Skeletal Vampire, my favorite 6-drop, perhaps in the entire cube, but definitely in black. I love Skeletal Vampire. There's a number of vampires in this cube, and we'll see why that matters in just a moment too. But this is one of the cooler ones, a vampire skeleton that makes bats. It's just all the coolest, like universal monster creature types. So I love it. Nightmare. Speaking of awesome 6-drops, man, this is one of the coolest looking cards in the whole cube. And even though mono black isn't so much of a reality, there are ways to put this in multicolored decks and still make it like a 6/6 pretty easily. Always will love Nightmare, but Noxious Gear Hulk is also in here in the 6-drops in black. This could just come down and blow up a dude, so it also cares about artifact synergies and stuff like that. But for the most part, this is great for the ETB trigger stuff and shenanigans with Restoration Angel. It's great for Reanimation Target with Victimize and stuff. Just Gear Hulk is a nice card to have. Gurmag Angler, also a zombie, by the way, so works with Graveborn Muse, but it's a nice thing to have. You can delve around. Lord of the Pit is in here because, again, love old school cards, and I just miss Lord of the Pit when I don't get to play it. So good for Aristocrats decks, I guess. Finally, there's Baron Singer, who can tap to regenerate a vampire, and we got like 4 different vampires in the cube, so that actually does come up from time to time. But without a Dark Ritual or similar, mana production, it's kind of tough to actually cast this guy. But along with like him and Lord of the Pit and stuff, they're just cards that I miss if they're not in the cube. So I got to have him for old school nostalgia value, if nothing else. But once he's on the table, he's a 5/5 flyer. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's do red next, and we'll start with Monastery of Swiftspear. Of course, you might think this is actually the best red 1-drop in the cube. The other ones don't stack up almost at all, but I wanted there to be not only a red-based spells deck, right, but a, mono red or red white or whatever, red green aggro deck. And Swiftspear is just a big part of facilitating that all those decks' existences. Goldhound, a weird one. Red, I'll go ahead and tell you, is probably going to be the weirdest looking collection of cards in this cube, but I have my reasons, and Goldhound is great for ramping out all the big stuff in the cube. He's great for fixing mana and stuff like that. He's great for wearing enchantments with the First Strike and Menace. Just all around solid dude, facilitates artifact synergies, just does like 6 things for 6 different draft archetypes in the same card. There's Orcish Lumberjack. While we're talking about ramp, this is some really good ramp in red-green. Anyone who's played with this card knows what I mean. Aside from that, Goblin Javelineer, probably the lowest power overall. Red 1-drop in the cube, but important, again, to have a 1/1 haste for 1 mana for the red aggro decks. There's also Curd Ape in here, I believe the last red 1-drop creature. Great for the Gruul decks and satisfies an old school itch. Lightning Bolts is in here. Why wouldn't Lightning Bolt be in this cube? Why would it not be there? Play with Fire is also in here, though. A Shock Effect wanted to be in here somewhere, I think. And Play with Fire is one of the better ones ever printed, so I'm playing that. There's also Faithless Looting. Yeah, great. It's good for reanimation and combo and stuff like that. Get you through your deck, churn to your good stuff. Let's play Faithless Looting. Infuriate is in here. I want a combat trick or two in the cube. I'm not huge on combat tricks, but I do like a combat trick from time to time. So we'll play the fancy foil Strixhaven Archive Infuriate that we have access to. There's a Blood Knight in here. I want all the colors that have knights like this to have their knights. So there's Blood Knight. Why not? There's Young Pyromancer while we're building those, instant sorcery, those spell slinging decks and stuff. This is one of the better cards you have, access to. Direfleet Daredevil is in here. Sweet little dude. Again, I like being able to play my opponent's cards in a cube where every card is ridiculous. So we'll play Direfleet Daredevil. Dark Dweller Oracle, a weird pick for the 2-drop slot, but I like this in sort of aristocrats builds and stuff, and it just helps you churn through your library, and I like that in limited period. There's Feldon, Renom Excavator, again for the mono red or just red-based aggro decks and stuff. This is one of the better 2-mana 2/2 hastes ever printed. There's Yavimaya Steel Crusher, maybe the most obscure card, maybe, in the entire cube. The most obscure cards in the cube are all in red. Steel Crusher is a 2-mana 2/2 within lists that doesn't come up too often, but what does come up is you can pay 1 and sack it to destroy an artifact. Big deal. I like this guy a lot in limited period, but I think it's a nice little, stealth pick for cube that goes under a lot of people's radar. There's also Incinerate in here, just 3 damage to a target. Can't regenerate. Could be important against those Will-o'-the-Wisps, right? There's a Braid in here. It's the old border one from Brothers War Commander or whatever. There's Pyroclasm from Ice Age, a nice little, small-scale red sweeper. Heartfire, another weird pick, but I really like this. He's good if you want to be sacrificing creatures, but it's also good in aggro because it's just 4 to the dome at instant speed for 2 mana. That's always going to be good. I like Heartfire, and this one's nice and shiny. Aside from that, there's Imperial Recruiter. This one, too, is a proxy from the Wish set. I didn't spend whatever it is, like $400. I don't know what this card costs. Like at least a couple $100 on an Imperial Recruiter. This is basically cardboard. They all are, technically, but you know what I mean. This is a proxy, but Imperial Recruiter is actually one of the better tutors in the entire cube. There's plenty of extremely important or, combo-y, pieces, key item 2-power creatures and less in this cube. So Imperial Recruiter is super important. Gutter Snipe is one of them. If you want to be slinging spells around and stuff, go find it with your Imperial Recruiter. Why not? Gutter Snipe's just a cool card to have sitting around. Everyone loves Gutter Snipe. There's Hot Jaya back when she was really looking nice. This card does a whole bunch of things, but the best thing it does is, incinerate stuff. You can cast Lightning Bolt for 2 mana if you tap a Jaya Ballard, and I love that about it. There's also Ball Lightning if you're trying to get aggressive. Ball Lightning is one of the best ways of doing that. There's Uthden Troll if you're trying to not get aggressive. One of the best ways of doing that. The regenerate on Uthden Troll really matters for blocking and such. There's Pia Nalar. This is one of the newer cards in the cube too, but really like Pia. We'll see not only Pia, but another card with her name on it a little bit later, but this is good again for enabling those artifact synergies and such. We've got Granite Gargoyle in here, one of the better Windrakes of all time. Just 3 mana 2/2 flyer you can pump the toughness of. There's Sukata Lancer, cool little dude. I know there's got to be this could be Reckless Stormseeker or any number of 3 mana hasty red guys, but I just love Sukata Lancer. Get off my back. I think he's cool. There's Sedge Troll, the Rakdos card in red here. And if you do have that Swamp out, which is super easy to get, then suddenly a 3 mana 3/3 regenerate is fantastic. So I just love Sedge Troll, always will. Exhibition Magician, maybe the weirdest card in the entire cube, but hear me out. There's a lot of big stuff to ramp into in this cube, and Exhibition Magician helps you do that while also fixing your mana at the same time. It enables token strategies. It enables aristocrat strategies by putting 2 bodies on the table. This enables 3 or 4 different archetypes to have like a role-playing kind of 23rd card in their deck a lot of the time. And I like Exhibition Magician for that. I know it's an odd pick for a cube and probably the one I'll have to justify the most in this whole video, but I like it. I like the way it looks. I think it's a cool card. I like the function. Get off my back. I like it. You see a pair of goblins is also in here. This is to enable the aggro strategies and such. And also tokens and aristocrats and, you know, things that want to have a bunch of creatures on the table. I think you see a pair is not a bad card either. So it's shiny. Aside from that, Hammer of Bogarden is in here. Love this card from way back in the day. Control decks can use it to just, you know, once a turn, hit their opponent for 3 and still keep counter spells up. Just a sick little card here, right? Chaos Warp is in here, so red can deal with literally anything. That's nice to be able to do that, right? We've got Pillage in the deck, so the red can deal with lands. This is the only land destruction piece in the deck, but most of the time you're going to be blowing up artifacts with a Pillage. Mana Flare is in here. Powerful card alert, ladies and gentlemen. This doubles mana production for everybody when they tap their lands. It's a Nissa who shakes the world for everyone for just 3 mana. That's tends to be really good, but obviously if you have Mana Flare in the deck, you're probably playing a bunch of expensive cards to pay it off. So hopefully you'll be able to take advantage of the symmetrical effects more than your opponent. There's Pia and Kiran Nalar. There's both of them. This is kind of a Whirler Rogue, just better. Sacking an artifact to deal 2 to a target is unbelievable, especially if you're trying to, again, enable these artifacts decks. This is just a great finisher for those. Balduvian Horde for the aggro-oriented decks and just for people who see a Balduvian Horde and get happy. There's a few of us out there. There's Keldon Warlord from Unlimited Edition looking nice. Look at that rich color looking good. But this guy just gets like +1/+1 for each creature you have out. It's nothing special, but can be good in certain token-based decks. Wildfire Emissary against those Path to Exiles and Swords to Plowshares and stuff. This is an important card in Standard. 25 years ago, but there was a reason for that, and that reason is present in this cube. Dragon Whelp is in here for the laughs, mostly for lulz, but it can be a solid card. Avalanche Riders, this is the other, I said there was only one, but this is the other land destruction thing in the cube, so sue me. Big Score is also in here. This is just great for fixing mana, for ramping, getting through your deck, all that. Big Score deserves to be in cubes everywhere. It really does. Visions of Phyrexia is a weird pick, but this can get you a Power Stone if you want it. It helps you ramp into artifacts and stuff, but mostly it's a red card that gets you an extra card every turn. I think that's really good and worth putting in a lot of cubes. Aside from that, Pyrotechnist is actually the only red 5-drop, a situation that probably needs to be remedied. And it's not like I haven't shown you a few red cards that could easily be cut and replaced, right? So remedy that situation. Put in Gold Spanner, Storm Breath Dragon, or whatever you want to do, right? But I'm just keeping this one Pyrotechnist as the lone 5-drop in red. Aside from that, there's Shivan Dragon for the 6-drops. Don't worry, we're making up for it in the 6-drops. I've been excusing these old school cards as just old school cards, but Shivan Dragon actually is really scary once it's on the table. It ends a lot of games. Meraxis of Keld is basically a Keldon Warlord, but literally on steroids. Look at him. He's obviously on steroids. Aside from that, there's Wildfire, the Oh Nutter Butters version. Again, Jesse Fish. I have had this copy of your Wildfire for 15 years, for about as long as I've had Sunny stuff. You guys just left your cards in my house. And then somehow we lost touch. I got married. I still have some of your cards. So Jesse, if you want this card, come get the card from me. But for now, it's in the cube, and it's very comical. You see, they see that Wildfire is happening, and they're like, "Oh, Nutter Butters!" It's hilarious. But Wildfire is an important card to have in your cube. There's also Pyrokinesis in case you want to blow stuff away for free. This could be Fire Blast. It isn't. I will not be taking questions. Blasphemous Act is also in here, so we have another red sweeper. It's effectively gonna kill everything on the table when it hits. Crimson Hellkite is a silly card, but I wanted more Mirage in the deck, or the cube. I love the way this card looks, and again, once it's on the table, you reanimate it into play or something, it can really do heinous stuff. You know, it's just removal on a stick. You could just play Royal Assassin, but Crimson Hellkite gives you a 6/6 flyer. Royal Assassin is an anemic 1/1 with, I think, leprosy. He doesn't look quite healthy to me, so I would just much rather reanimate a Crimson Hellkite if it were me. There's also Rock Hydra. The only Hydra in the whole cube, I believe. No, that's not true. That's not true. There is a green Hydra. But I like Rock Hydra. It's a little silly, 5-mana 3/3 and all that. But once you've ramped, this can be a great ramp sort of payoff to get you a 6/6 and start growing it every turn and stuff. Just a nice little card, dude. I like Rock Hydra. Aside from that, there's Earthquake, one of the 2 big X spells in the deck. You've already seen the other one because I revealed it a second ago. But Earthquake is obviously a great, effectively sweeper. And there's Fireball, the last red card in the deck. Apparently I pulled a green card. on accident. But anyway, Fireball, the last red card in the deck. You need a giant red X spell that does X damage to a target. Fireball's the OG. Let's play it. Now, I already know how the green cards start because you saw that Lawn War Elves. Let me show you that Lawn War Elves from Unlimited Edition, looking really nice. Aside from that, we got Findhorn Elves. Birds of Paradise could be in this cube if you wanted it to be, but I just like having the redundant effect of having two Lawn War Elves effectively. There's also Teething Wormlet if you want to see an interesting green 1-drop. This enables those artifact synergies, and it's shiny. I got it. Come on, guys. I could not put shiny Teething Wormlet in the cube. It's just so cool. It's also Worldly Tutor. This and another card were both sent by Barry Drake as a Christmas present, longtime patron. Barry Drake sent me the Commander Collection green for Christmas, and Worldly Tutor was in there. We needed one badly for the cube, so thanks, Barry. I appreciate that. There's Wild Growth. This enables those enchantment strategies. So does Abundant Growth. Doesn't ramp or anything, but it does draw you a card. Wild Growth don't do that. So there's also Elvish Archers, just another nostalgia fixing card, but actually a solid one too. A 2-mana 2/1 first strike could be worse. There's Werewolf Pack Leader if you want a really good 2-drop creature. Again, this is partially in there because it's borderless and it's foil, and I basically couldn't help myself, but it also helps that it's a very solid 2-drop in green. So it's one of the better ones we could actually choose. It's also Scavenging Ooze. Nice little promo version here if we want to mess around in graveyards. Joel Real, the pre-release promo. This, along with Min, is just great for decks that want to draw extra cards. This actually enables, if you get this and Min in the same draft, a Simic draw, multiple cards a turn deck that just does really silly stuff. You're popping off, making cats and illusions, dropping free stuff when the illusion dies, paying 6 and just making all your illusions and cats huge. Like, Joel Real is really, really a very sweet card that I have loved since she was premiered. I love the callback to, Monvuli and Mirage. I can't talk about it too long, but you guys know I love this card. Wilson, Refined Grizzly, just a 2-mana 2/2 that can't be countered and also has Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Ward 2. Don't worry about choosing a background. Just a nice guy to build a battleship onto. And even if you don't build a battleship onto him with auras, still a 2-mana guy with all these abilities. Could be worse. Kappa Tech Wrecker is in here. I would like for this, I think, to be Canker Bloom, but for the time being, I'll take the awesome alternate art from Kamigawa, shiny Leonardo. Like, I actually think that even if I had Canker Bloom, I might keep this in the cube. It just looks so cool. Sylvan Ranger, the promo, is in here. Nice for fixing lands and stuff like that. Everyone needs a Sylvan Ranger from time to time. Galagreeters, buy a box promo, is in here. Great for creature-based decks, and I don't have to tell you that. Just a slick little card. Dragon's Guard Elite, Strixhaven promo with the full art. Borderless, just incredible card too. This enables those spell slinging strategies in green if you get this guy, which is just something you don't see too often. So you can do like green-white spell slinging if you get like this and Seeker of the Way and Clever Lumomancer, and that's just, I like having a broad and sort of diverse selection of like spell slinging archetypes, and Dragon's Guard Elite lets us have that. Elvish Visionary draws us a card when it ETBs, and so does Wall of Blossoms. Why not play both of those? We've also got Wall of Roots, one of the only like 2-drop mana dorks in the deck, but this mana dork blocks really, really well and doesn't tap to make mana. There's also Fertile Ground, technically a 2-drop mana dork, but again enables these Enchantress-based decks. There's Farseek in here, not a mana dork, but a 2-drop ramper along with Rampant Growth. Rampant Growth looks like the better card to some players, but Farseek can actually go get like dual lands and stuff. Keep that in mind. We've got Sylvan Library, the other card provided by Barry Drake. I would not have a Sylvan Library if it weren't for Barry, and I've wanted one for a good long time. So I appreciate that, bud. This is just a very important card, not only for the Enchantress-based strategies, but basically any mid-range deck with green, period, is going to want Sylvan Library. Extremely powerful card here. Rabid Bite is a nice shiny way for green decks to blow stuff up, right? They need that. Terra Sunder, one of the gold cards in green. This one does not have to be kicked in order to be very good. It's effectively a strictly better disenchant, even if it's not kicked. So let's go. Exile is good. Regrowth is in here, just obviously an important sort of role-playing tool, especially in toolbox decks to get back important cards and stuff that you pitched. Verduran Enchantress. There's the other Enchantress, ladies and gentlemen. So that's a few different cards so far, and there's still another one that draw cards when we play enchantments. That's why there's a bit of a focus on making sure that Enchantress sub-theme works in this cube. But one of my favorite cards of all time, maybe the first card I ever fell in love with and built a deck around. So she's got to be in here. And look how cool she is. Look how cool she looks, guys. But it's also Eternal Witness, this nice little secret lair art here. And just, again, how could you build a cube without E-Witness? You know what I mean? Not strictly better than Regrowth, but this can be blinked and bounced and played again and stuff. So yeah, Witness is always going to be a good card to have. Utabi Orangutan. What are they doing in the background? Yeah, this blows up artifacts. Wood Elves, a nice little 3-drop ramper here. That's kind of important. And again, this can go and get forests, not basic forests, but stuff like Tropical Island and stuff. Fyndhorn Elder is a 3-drop that taps for 2 mana. That's decent ramp. We've got Yavimaya Elder, which we can do all kinds of stuff with. You know, this dies, we get 2 basics, put them in our hand. We can pay 2 mana and sack it to draw a card. Just basically sacks to get 3 things, which is really, really good. Killer Bees is in here because none of my cubes would be complete without Killer Bees. I actually had to cut Unyaru Bees from this cube because I was playing both Unyaru Bees and Killer Bees, and I just couldn't justify that. So if I'm going to make that cut, Killer Bees is staying in. I love this card. There's Beast Within for the green 3-drops. This is just, you know, unconditional destroy anything in green. That we need to have that. Cultivate is in here, just perfect ramp. It's either this or Horror in this slot, and I think Cultivate's the better card. Kudzu is in here. I keep saying I'm done with stuff that destroys lands, but I'm just tricking you. Kudzu is an especially nasty one that does proc our Verduran Enchantress and stuff, so keep that in mind. There's Enchantress's Presence, speaking of enchantments and stuff. So basically a Verduran Enchantress that can't be killed with a lightning bolt. That's pretty important. You know, Gaia's Anthem is in here, or Gia's. It's Gaia, whatever. Anthem is in here. It's the green glorious Anthem. All your dudes get +1/+1. Yavimaya Ants. There's not a whole lot of 4-drops in green, which is a situation, again, I think I might need to remedy. But the green 4-drops are great. You know, this is pretty good while you can pay the cumulative upkeep on it because it's just going to swing in and smack. It feels like a green ball lightning. Although there is a green ball lightning that I have, Groundbreaker, and it's not in this cube. I actually cut it. But anyway, we've also got Questing Beast. Once you get through reading it, you are too old. The game ended hours ago, but it still obviously is a good card. Arasta of the Endless Web, the only enchantment creature in the entire cube. You'd think there'd be more, but there's actually not. I want honest enchantments in the cube, but Arasta obviously fuels those enchantment strategies and is great in sort of pseudo battles against like Talran that your opponent got, you know? So I just think this thing is really, really cool. Pays off nicely and is great against any opponents who are slinging spells. So I like Arasta. There's Kesa in here, the most beat up card in the entire cube. You can see the outline of just like garbage around it, you know. It's all frayed. It's a beautiful card. So yes, Kesa. Garrick's Pack Leader is in here to make sure that we can get a whole bunch of value. Green wants to draw cards. Why don't we do that? Garrick's Pack Leader's card that needs to be in more cubes. Verder's Gear Hulk is also in here to have a big man that can get bigger or distribute counters, whatever. Also an artifact. Green Sleeves is in here. Protection from wizards, that might matter, but mostly it's as big as the number of lands we control, and it can make more 3/3s. It can take over games super fast. Defiler of Vigor is in here. A 5-drop 6/6 trample that lets us cast things for cheaper and makes our guys bigger. Not a whole lot of 4-drops in green, but a lot of really stacked 5s in green because green needs good 5-drops. Like Overrun here. We're out of the creatures, but Overrun is still a card that's mostly going to be for creature-based decks that definitely is one of those cards in Magic history that is most appropriately named. If you got like 4 dudes on the board, you win the game and you cast Overrun. There's also Autumn Willow. The only card, if I'm not again mistaken, besides Baron Singer from Homelands. Obviously, that's not going to be too well represented here, but Autumn Willow is actually still a great card in Limited. Force of Nature. Wow, there's got to be like one old school, you know, 3rd edition creature back from when we all started playing in 95 in every color, and Force of Nature is that one but green. Colossal Dreadmaw is also in the cube, mostly as a meme. Isn't it funny? Laugh at it. Anyway, there's also Desert Twister in here. As we get to the non-creature green 6-drops, I again think any cube needs this card. Destroy target permanent for 6 mana is not the best rate in the world, but you'd be surprised how often you play this card. Titan of Industry is in there as a great little ramp or reanimation target. And then finally, Genesis Hydra. Why I had to stop myself when I said there's no more Hydras, because Genesis Hydra is in fact in this cube. Now we are very close to the end. We've made it through all 5 colors, so now we got to look at multicolor, colorless, and land, which we actually should rocket through pretty quickly. Now, each guild gets 3 different cards in multicolor, so there were some really tough choices, and I actually allowed Twitter to make at least one of those. Baleful Strix is a nice little Dimir creature that I would not be caught dead without. Let's play that thing. Just a sick little dude in a bunch of different decks. There's also Hostage Taker, which could have been Urtai. Could have been the new Urtai, but Twitter said resoundingly that they would prefer Hostage Taker to have this slot in the cube, and I listened to them. It is the cooler card, pretty much undeniably. Lochmere Serpent for a control finisher in the cube. This is a sweet little control finisher that I don't think enough people are putting in their cubes, to be honest. In Gruul, we've got Goblin Anarchomancer. It's just a sweet little thing that makes spells cost less, and we got a nice little like old border version of it too. Stormbind, one of my favorite enchantments of all time, and one of the few Ice Age cards in this entire cube. But not only is it great for Enchantress and stuff, but you can build whole decks around this. Control-ish kind of decks that keep the creatures off the board, zap them when they do show up or whatever. Just Stormbind is a nice card. We've got Bloodbraid Elf in here. You know, it's Bloodbraid Elf. It's the cool art. Why not? We can only have so many cards, and why not play one of the better Gruul cards of all time? Sure. There's also Azorius here, Teferi's Moat, an extremely annoying card that really, along with things like Orum's Prayer, Dawn of Hope, Sacred Mesa, there's a few of them, enable this sort of control-based Enchantress pile in this cube that we can draft up. Teferi's Moat's one of the more important parts of that package. There's also Time Wipe for a sweeper that can protect one of your guys, but for the most part, 5-mana sweeper. Sphinx's Revelation, the retro frame one, is in here. Really like this too for control decks. I think they ought to have access to a piece like this. We've got in Orzhov, and you know Orzhov's my favorite guild, and I had to make some tough cuts here. And there might be one card that you expect to see, and you'll totally see it. It's Priest. It's not Priest of Fell Rites, though. It's the one after that. Priest of Fell Rites is just a sweet, though, piece of reanimation. And since both black and white have reanimation elements in this cube already, why don't we play a card that can do both? That is both those colors and can do a reanimation thing. There's also, though, Ellis O'Court. This is the one you might think that you would see. And here it is. This is the third of our 4 Blood Artist effects in this cube, because I love Blood Artist effects. And you know I love Ellis O'Court. Why not play the shiny one that we have? We are, in fact, getting married. But there's also Angel of Despair in here for reanimation target or ramp target, but mostly a reanimation target. ETBs, it's a 5/5 flyer. ETBs destroy target permanent. Hell of a reanimation target. And was one of the better creatures in Solar Flare back when that was a deck, if you remember Magic history. There's Expressive Iteration as we start the Izzet stuff. The old bordered one. Looking fresh, by the way. I just love the way this card looks. But obviously, Expressive Iteration is, I dare to say, one of the best Izzet cards ever printed. Let's put it in our cube. There's also Goblin Electromancer, which again will make instants and sorceries cost less. So even though I don't want every blue-red spells deck to, or every spells deck to be blue-red, obviously we need to enable that archetype a little bit, and Goblin Electromancer helps with that. Old Borders Joyra in here, the retro frame Joyra. Just great in any artifact focused deck. So obviously if you have a bunch of legendaries, this works too, but mostly we're going to be slinging artifacts onto the table with Joyra, with Tappy Toe Claws over there. We got in Rakdos Judith, the 4th and final of our Blood Artist effects. You guys know how much I love Judith too. We built a commander deck around this and put it on the channel a little while ago, and it's my favorite commander deck that I have ever built in my life. That includes the Ellis O'Court commander deck that I'm running with right now. I actually like the Judith one a little bit more, so still like Ellis more, but I like the Judith deck more. So you knew this had to be in here. There's also Bedevil. I had a few choices of Rakdos cards that I really wanted. One of them was Terminate, but I felt like Bedevil was the more interesting card, to be honest. And honestly, I like the way this copy of Bedevil looks more than any of the copies of Terminate that I have looked. Interesting choice for Rakdos here is Mishra, Tamer of Mekfawa. This is mostly to enable artifact synergies, right? We've got a few cards that do this in this cube. We've got Grixis decks that are capable of it, and just Rakdos decks that are capable of it. That's largely in part to Mishra. So I wanted some more artifact synergies in the cube to enable some cool stuff. Play in Mishra. In Golgari, we've got Assassin's Trophy for just a kill-all piece of removal. Skyfisher Spider, a weird one in Golgari, though. I just love this thing. I love sacking a creature and killing whatever. It's just a sweet card. It's no binding the old gods or anything, but I think in some cases it's just better. So I like Skyfisher. I think it's neat, and it's very shiny, so we'll play it. There's also a shiny Casualties of War in here while we're looking at disgusting Golgari cards. 2 out of the 3 Golgari cards in this cube are extremely overpowered. Casualty is one of those too. In Selesnya, there's the Cool Art Kasali Pride Mage in here to blow up artifacts and enchantments. We've got Armadillo Cloak to, of course, enable those artifact and enchantment, or those enchantment strategies rather. But it's just good even if you're not playing Enchantress. Throw an Armadillo Cloak on something, you'll have a good time. Kitchen Finks is our last Selesnya card, just a solid all-around thing to have access to, obviously. Boros has the weirdest cards of basically any of these guilds. Swiftblade Vindicator is great to build a battleship with. If you want to throw a Divine Transformation on this, have a 4/4 Double Strike Vigilance Trample, you'll be doing okay with that. But there's plenty of ways to increase this thing's power, whether it's through Anthem effects or whatever, auras, artifacts, whatever, equipment in this deck. So shouldn't have too hard of a time making Swiftblade Vindicator a decent card in this cube. And she shines. But there's also a Crow and Hoplite, maybe the weakest card in all of multi-color, but still okay. It's okay. If you're building the red-white aggro deck that exists like crazy in this cube, a Crow and Hoplite can attack for 5 like pretty easily. So it's not a bad card. There's Zerta the Dawnbreaker, or Dawnwaker rather. This is just good on raid as a 3-mana 3/3 that also makes creatures not be able to block. That also has the activated ability thing, right? And there's a bunch of activated abilities in this cube, believe it or not, especially once we do get to the artifacts and stuff. In Simic, we've got Grove Spiral, really good in that, Min/Jol Real, draw extra cards every turn deck. This is fantastic in there, but it's really good for any Simic ramp deck, obviously. It's also Croaking Counterpart. There were probably better Simic cards I could put in this slot, but there are no more fun Simic cards I can put in this slot. Even with all the cubes, or all the clones in this cube already, I can't resist playing Croaking Counterpart. It's shiny. Why wouldn't I play a shiny Croaking Counterpart? But even if it weren't shiny, I would still play this. Just such a fun card. But then there's Hydroid Krasis, probably the best ramp payoff in the entire cube. And the best ramp payoff in the entire cube should be Simic, because Simic is kind of tough to win some games with some of the time. Doesn't have the best removal in the world, right? It makes for a great ramp deck, but because it's a little difficult to win with Simic ramp, you need the best ramp payoff in Simic, and Hydroid Krasis is the best ramp payoff. But there's also, we get to 5 3-color cards. 5 3-color cards, mostly to incentivize the playing of deck colors that I'm not sure people would otherwise play, but some of these are also in here just because I think they're cool, and I think you'll know them when you see them. Fiery Justice is in here mostly to incentivize the playing of Naya, but it's a great removal piece that can sometimes blow up entire boards on the other side of the table. Kind of a one-sided wrath. Questing Feldegriff is just an awesome card. This incentivizes playing Bant. It does do that, but it's just such a cool card. It's a purple. I wish it had one eye and one horn, because it is a flying purple people eater. It's just a sweet little card, dude. I'll always love Feldegriff. Put it in my cube. Alayla, Artful Provocateur. This pays off sort of, blue-white X flying strategies. There's not a whole lot of things in the cube that do that. If you want to build blue-white flyers, splash black and add Alayla. But it's also good for artifact and enchantment strategies, and I want kind of as many enchantresses as possible. I want as many artifact things as possible. And Alayla does all that. It shores up all of those things and gives us all of those archetypes. So yes, I'll play her. Siege Rhino is in here. Just, I came in riding rhinos, repping that Abzan, and this is just the best Abzan card I could possibly think of to have in the cube. So I'm playing Siege Rhino. Surik Dragonclaw is the final gold card in here because I wanted to incentivize the playing of Teamer. I don't know if it's going to get played too often. So, you might pick up a Surik and have a 5-mana 6/6 flash that can't be countered, and all your dudes have trample and stuff. It's worth playing this if you pick it up, and you can stomach playing Teamer, because I'm not sure how powerful that color combination is a lot of the time in this cube, but Surik Dragonclaw is obviously a good reason to do so. But let's move in to artifacts, starting with Jeweled Amulet here, our only 0-cost artifact. I've been talking about them proxies from Wish. You might think that I'm really tempted to use the Moxen or the Black Lotus or whatever, Mana Crypt. But no, those are just too powerful. I've cubed with those before. People that get them tend to, lopsidedly tend to win games and such. So I don't love doing it. I will play with a poor man's Moxen. That is Jeweled Amulet all day, though. I'll also play with Ivory Tower. Yeah, you don't have to worry. The Antiquities cards and Legends cards and stuff are in sleeves in this video. You're about to freak out on me last time because I don't sleeve my cards, but The people from the Discord that sent me some of these cards also sent me a bunch of sleeves. So thank them, I sleeved expensive stuff like this, and it's all thanks to them. But Ivory Tower's great. Just a great card, and look how it looks. Look at the color palette. Look at that purple sky with the orange sun. It looks so good. But Rack is also in here. Another card with a good color palette, but will pay off those sort of discardy decks or just anyone who is playing aggro and stuff. You can really hurt them with the Rack, but you can also hurt people with Black Vice if your opponent is drawing a bunch of cards or playing control or whatever. But even if they're not doing that, Black Vice can deal a quick 3 or 4, 5 damage to them in the first few turns of the game. So yes to that. Soul Ring is also in here. No explanation needed, I would assume, probably. Here's also Sensei's Divining Top. This is a proxy. The Soul Ring you just saw is not, but the Sensei's Divining Top is, go figure. Barbed Sextant, one of the weirdest looking cards in the whole cube, but again, reps Ice Age, produces any color mana that you want, and cantrips. That's magic for draw a card, and that's actually all pretty good for just 1 mana. It's kind of like a Chromatic Spear, but instead you get to play an Ice Age card, which I like. You get to play a card illustrated by Amy Weber, and I like her art. But it's also Skull Clamp. Sorry about that. Just a really good card, and again, great for that like Min Jor-El deck. But I gotta stop talking about that. The card's just good in everything that plays creatures. Right? Tokens decks. Skull Clamp's amazing. Spring Leaf Drum, a little bit of ramp if you want a little bit of ramp for 1 mana. Why not do that? Swiftfoot Boots is in here, the first equipment that we're seeing. And remember that we saw stuff like Danitha earlier and other things. 1 or 2 things that care about equipment. I will point out Danitha again as we go through these. But Swiftfoot Boots is kind of the least important of them. But if you do have an important creature like Talrand or Young Pyromancer, you could do well to put a Swiftfoot Boots on it, obviously. Mazemind Tome is in here, the retro schematic version of it, to draw cards. Why not? I actually think Mazemind Tome is more than worthy of cubing. Conch Horn, another Fallen Empires card, and maybe the last one that we'll see, I think. But still, sweet little card here. This is, I think you could argue, maybe in the top 3 cards from Fallen Empires. It is very, very good. Not only because it looks pretty, and it does. This is a very good-looking piece of art. Love the color palette. Love anything by Phil Foglio, but this is probably my favorite piece of Phil Foglio art ever. But all that being said, it's just a good card in terms of function, too. It draws you extra cards. Any deck can play it. That's actually really sweet. It's like a mini Brainstorm that a green deck can play, and that's a good card. There's also Yumezawa's Jete. This is a heck of equipment to put on either Danitha or Soliflora. If you put a Yumezawa's Jete on a Soliflora, then suddenly all your creatures have this. Same thing with Swiftfoot Boots, by the way. If you put a Swiftfoot Boots on a Soliflora, all your creatures have hexproof. It's hilarious. But anyway, Jete is obviously another card that gives people flashbacks and nightmares and stuff, so I'll take it away now. Millstone is in here for those control decks that want to be annoying, and it is. It's a very annoying card. Also works with Zerda, so you can activate it for free. I just want to point that out. But there's a Howling Mine in here. This is like a Mazemind Tome that everyone can use for free, so that's nice. This is another card that I'm going to have a hard time cutting from any cube. It effectively speeds the game up, and I just like that. I know your opponent gets to draw 2 first. I just don't really care. I don't care. It's a great card. Belwar Stone is in here as we hit a vein, for, if you'll pardon the pun, of Mana Rocks. Belwar Stone, I've got like 4 copies of one from the dark. One of them made it in here. This is one of my favorite cards. In the history of Magic, I love the way it looks. I love anything Quentin Hoover, but the color palette on this is beautiful. And it's just a 2-mana rock with no real downside whatsoever, so it's great. There's also Mind Stone, however, another 2-mana rock that doesn't produce whatever colors or whatever, but still great. Sacks to draw a card, you'll play Mind Stone. Sky Diamond is in here. It taps for blue mana. Moss Diamond taps for green, and looks great, by the way. I love the background on that. Fire Diamond taps for red. Charcoal Diamond taps for black, and Marble Diamond taps for white. All the charms are all the diamonds from Mirager here. There's also Ornithopter of Paradise, our last 2-mana rock. This is one of the reasons we're not playing birds. It's because I'd just rather play Ornithopter of Paradise and give any deck access to this kind of effect while also paying off artifact synergies and such. Etched Champion is the other thing that can give protection from white and go into the Pestilence deck, so that's kind of cute. But Champion is just sweet. It's one of those things that pays off artifact synergies and just allows you to start getting through or blocking or throw something big on it or whatever. So I like it. Sword of Fire and Ice, the only other equipment, to the best of my knowledge, in here, and is probably one of the best things to put on Soliflora, or Danitha for that matter. Just a sick little thing, man. There's no other protection from blue in the whole cube, and there's only one other protection from red card, Paladin Invec. This also has some of the best effect on the game state when it actually procs, you know? It's the only sword in the entire cube. But if I'm going to put one sword in the cube, it's going to be Sword of Fire and Ice. There's also Sculpting Steel, so we can copy that Sword of Fire and Ice, I guess, if we want to. It's not legendary, why not? But this can copy any artifact. This can be really important for artifact synergies and such. Basalt Monolith as a mana rock, literal mana. It's very large mana rock. Masticore is in here. Awesome card, can end a game by itself, and just looks cool too, but it's Masticore, come on. We've got Solemn Simulacrum, the new old bordered one, that retro frame looking good, but I think Solemn Simulacrum basically goes in every cube that anyone makes from here to eternity. It's a little boring, but it's Solemn Simulacrum. Solid card, obviously. Juggernaut's in here for the old school lols, and so you can make jokes about old YouTube videos no one remembers anymore, but still, it's a fun card to play. Traxos is in here, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever you cast a historic spell, untap it. That's actually really, really nice. So I like Traxos a good bit. I think it's a nice artifact payoff. Or I say artifact payoff. It's a nice artifact creature. Panharmonicon sent by patron Boogeyman Fox and member 2 of the Discord. Panharmonicon is just a great card. No cube should be complete. No cube is truly fun without Panharmonicon. Yes, play this card. Trading Post is in here. This facilitates a lot of things, from Reanimator by discarding stuff to Tokens decks by making those. Aristocrats decks by making tokens, obviously. Aristocrats decks by sacking creatures. Artifacts decks by getting artifacts back and stuff. Just Trading Post is a fun one too and goes in a bunch of different stuff. Scion of Urza. That's why I have to say colorless cards instead of artifacts, because Karn has made his way into here. I say there's no planeswalkers in the cube. This is the one planeswalker in the cube. So I guess like Bone Shards can kill a planeswalker, technically. It technically can, but even so, Karn Scion of Urza was just the right power level. In any deck can play him that I wanted to slip him in, and when you do see him, you're probably likely to play him, right? But I can't say there's no walkers, because this guy is here. We've got Icy Manipulator in here. This guy's going to show up in all of my cubes too. I think all cubes should have Icy, even if it does get a little bit annoying. Nevimriel's Disc is in here to give any deck a sweeper, probably the last sweeper that will hit, to the best of my knowledge. But just a great card. And with all of our regenerate creatures like Uthden Troll and Will-o'-the-Wisp and stuff, Nevimriel's Disc can be just very annoying. There's also Snake Basket in here, a little known card from Visions, but I wanted Visions to be represented on a couple of cards, and Snake Basket is actually better than anyone gives it credit for. You pump mana into it, you pop it, you get that many stakes, everyone has fun. Hopefully they're not on a plane. We've also got Duplicant in here, the last clone in the cube, but this is a clone that kills the thing that you know what I mean? It's pretty stupid. It exiles the thing that it's cloning. And that's very good, especially when any deck can play it. It's also a Triskelion. This is great to bounce when it's only got one thing left on it, or to Restoration Angel and refresh to get more counters or whatever. Just Triskelion always looks like it costs too much, but it's always surprisingly effective once it's on the table. Last artifact in the deck is Meteor Golem. It's meatier than those other meatballs, but it's pretty good. 7 mana is a lot to pay, but destroy target permanent and get a body. Usually worth it in your ramp decks. But let's get into the lands, and that will conclude the cube. We've got Inditha Triome. Not Sativa, it's Inditha Triome to start things off here. But there's also Zagoth Triome with these beautiful arts. We're almost done with Triomes, though, because the last one is Zayator's Proving Ground. So we basically get, Abzan, Sultai, and Jund. Tri-lands that actually have the swamp type. That's important for Nightmare, because Nightmare wants you to have swamps in play. So these are 3 black lands that all have the swamp subtype, but also produce other colors. Aside from that, all 7 of the other tri-lands are here, but none of them have those basic land types or regular land types. Like Seaside Citadel's here, Crumbling Necropolis is Grixis, Mystic Monetary is Jeskai, Frontier Bivouac is Temur, Nomad Outpost is Mardu, Arcane Sanctum is Esper, Jungle Shrine is Naya. Now, we get into the dual lands. These two are all proxies. I cannot afford dual lands. They cost a lot of money. So these are all proxies from Wish.com. We've got Tundra. We've got Tropical Island in here. It's just one of each. Savannah, Volcanic Island, Plateau, Bayou, underground, river, sea, actually. Yeah, the rivers from Ice Age. We've got Badlands. We've got Scrubland. We've got a Taiga in here. So, you know, all the dual lands, one of each. And then we've got 5 lands, just lands that don't really fit like a dual or tricolor category. We've got Maze of Ith in here. Maybe one of my favorite cards of all time. And again, the dark has to be represented. So we're playing Maze of Ith. There's also a Fabled Passage. It wasn't Evolving Wilds, but Fabled Passage is just better. Plus we have the promo one. It's all shiny. It's got the shooting star. It's got the yellow text box. I want it. I love it. There's also a Mishra's Factory in here to have a creature land. It's the only creature land in the whole cube, but we'll play the original one, you know. Keldon Outpost, not a creature land, but does make creatures and is great for those white-based aggro decks, or even those white-based mid-range and control decks. It just basically goes in everything, because the Creature Factory is great if your deck is heavy enough white to be playing the planes to support something like this, you know. And then the final card in the entire cube is Gemstone Mine. It could be City of Brass, but I actually like Gemstone Mine better. I think it's more balanced. I think it just looks better as a Magic card. This is back again when they use the yellow text box. I love the art on the card. I love the color palette. It just looks great. It punishes you. You can't use it all game unless you somehow recharge it, you know, so or send it back to your hand and play it again, something like that. So I just really like Gemstone Mine. I like Weatherlight a lot, and there's not a whole lot of Weatherlight stuff in the cube, so I wanted it represented. There's a lot of reasons I'm playing this over City of Brass, and some of them are practical, some of them nostalgic, but pretty nostalgic for City of Brass too. I just really like me some Gemstone Mine, and it actually does help more than you might think with enabling these like 3-color decks and such. But that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have done it. I think we have made it. That is the entire cube. Let me send it back to Stand Up Dev to finish the video off. But hey, I'm back standing up. How'd old Dev do showing off the cube there? I don't know yet. I recorded the intro and outro back to back. YouTube magic, baby. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this one and it inspired you to start working on your own cube or whatever if you want to, instead of having to watch the whole video over again. There's a link to Cube Cobra and the list on that site in the description. And if you want to pick up any of these pieces, I'll also leave a link over to TCG Player where you get the whole link for the cube on that website. And of course, I'm affiliated with them. If you order any of the pieces through the link I provide, it'll help out the channel a little bit. So thanks in advance for that. But aside from that, if you really want to help out around here, you can check out the link to Patreon in the description. That is patreon.com/SBMTG. Pretty easy right there. Just $1 a month, and you can vote on what content we do here on the channel, and I'd really appreciate the help. You can also watch me play some Magic on twitch.tv/SBMTGdev. Again, link in the description to that if you're interested. But I'm not going to take any more of your time. You just watched what I assume is a pretty long block of video talking about the whole cube. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. Just let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. Any opinions or ways we could use certain slots better? I'm sure Dev said a bunch of stuff when he was going through the cards. But anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.